No matter what happens with a minor situation, no matter whether Fernandes sticks around for another season or not, we need those midfield reinforcements and we need them fast. And the three names that's constantly being linked to United in the transfer market is always Anderson, Wharton and Baleba. All terrific midfielders in their own right, and they all bring a little bit of something different to the table. And who knows, maybe United can get more than one of them in before next season.
Two! Is one not enough?
If it is to be only one though, Baleba does still seem to be top of the pile for United, even after Brighton rejected our advances last summer. In this video today though, I wanted to talk about something that I've not really seen a lot of people talk about in regards to Baleba's game, and it's something that's worried me now when I've gone back to watch him in games for Lille and gone back to watch him in games last season for Brighton and carried into this season as well. Something that people have not really talked about, but it's a worrying area for me. Stay tuned to see what that is, guys. Drop a like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new around here, and let's get into it.
Let's go.
So what is it that I've seen then throughout Baleba's career? Well, even just from the latest game that Brighton had up against Liverpool, you can see in this instance when Brighton are trying to advance from the centre-backs and the goalkeeper further into the opposition half. Baleba, for me, just simply isn't doing enough to get away from these sort of markers in these sort of positions. You can see as I run it on here, Baleba is still easily being marked out of the game, on his heels a lot of the time, not really doing enough to really make himself available for those centre-backs when they have the ball. Something that we've spoken about a lot with United is United's midfielders, are they showing themselves enough? Well, if you're going to be spending £100 million on Baleba, you're expecting something a little bit more than this. And this, as I've said, has been a constant throughout his career now, so it's something that does need to be worked on. I can run it on here, and as Van Ecke still has the ball for Brighton, Baleba still just doing these little sort of pendulum movements, just back and forth, but never quite really doing enough, in my opinion, if you're going to be that sort of tempo-setting midfielder that United so desperately need. And you think, yeah, there's a passing lane here, you can get that ball into Baleba in midfield, but no, again, he's marked out of it, not quite doing enough to get that ball off from that centre-back, so the ball goes out wide instead. Again, a little bit later on, as the ball goes back into the centre-backs then, it's Brighton's other midfielder that's making that run and be making himself available for that bounce pass in order to get Brighton away from that Liverpool first initial press. So it's just not Baleba not really doing enough, in my opinion. This was another game from this season, a little bit earlier on now, against Everton. Again, you can just see Baleba here, just keeps making those movements, just back and forth in the middle of the pitch as Brighton centre-backs have the ball, but he's never really doing a lot to get away from the shadow of his marker, so he's not really making himself ever really available. So it's just something in his game that I've noticed, and as I've said, it's been there throughout now. So if you want to be that number 6 for a very, very top club, surely you've got to be doing a little bit more. Even if you take all of Baleba's struggles this season out of it, even if he rediscovers the form that he had from last season, this aspect of his game was still there when he was flying high last season, when he was linked, obviously, to that £100 million move. And it's really something for me that separates Baleba from those other two midfielders the United are constantly linked with. And it's obviously in terms of being that sort of tempo-setting midfielder that people talk about and say the United so desperately need. So why are we linked to Baleba then? Because of course Baleba is still a young player. He's still someone who doesn't actually have a ton of minutes because he moved to Brighton from Lille when he was really, really inexperienced really in his career. So it could be obviously something that just needs to be really coached out of him, or sort of something that's coached into him, doing those sort of little double movements in that middle of the pitch to get on the ball a little bit more. So maybe it's a coaching thing. It also could just be instructional from Hertzler. It could be going on to Baleba saying this, but it could be an instruction from his coach that he might just want him to be that sort of third man in midfield, to rely really on facing forward and carrying the ball in order to get Brighton further up the pitch. Two areas of the game that Baleba really excels in. But even under other managers, it was in his game, and I just feel like there wasn't enough effort to really carve space for himself. Like, Baleba can drop short, but there's little to no variation in it. There's no real sharp movements to try and get himself away from his attackers. A little change of direction. There's no double movements to really wrong foot his markers. And if he added some of those layers to his game, I think his game would go up to another level then. At United, I see so many people saying that if we sign a midfielder, all our build-up issues will suddenly be solved. But for me, that's really just not the case. I mean, even if we signed up Wharton or Anderson, I still don't think they would single-handedly solve all our build-up issues. At the end of the day, it starts with the manager and his intentions. We've literally had these stats recently backing up our thoughts on how direct United are, and these are even when United are leading in games. So imagine what it's like when it's sort of 0-0 at the very start. And we've seen this for months now, as we've just sort of skipped short build-up entirely, relying on winning the second balls and playing really direct. Signing a Wharton or an Anderson would probably help a little bit more in the build-up, as they are more of that tempo setter and they can do that sort of stuff when they're playing from deep. But it's clear now that Amorim doesn't really want that. And that's fully indicated by the fact that Mino can't get minutes in our midfield currently. As he showed the other night, the job he can do in terms of setting the pace in the midfield, he has all those tempo setting qualities. But we just don't want that currently in the Amorim setup. And Amorim's intentions are just further highlighted by the fact that Baleba is still our first choice signing for our midfield. Because obviously Baleba does hold his own defensively. He still does that even this season when he's been struggling a little bit. But for me, Baleba just simply doesn't give you that control. Instead, he gives you that raw sort of power, that physicality to his game. And I think that's really what Amorim wants. He talks so much, especially after we've had a bad result, about United's intensity, how that's not quite at the desired level. He spoke about it after Europa League games last year as well. He always said that in the Europa League, we were able to perform a little bit better as we could outpower a lot of teams. So Amorim always values that physical side of the game, I think, rather than anything else.
Physically, it's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I think so. And
running pace, power.
Yeah,
strength.
and when we play against European teams, you can feel that we can cope better with that. Yeah. In Premier League, we suffer a lot.
The Baleba links are just a sign for me of United doubling down on this physical approach under Amorim. But I can only see it getting us so far. We saw versus Bournemouth how great this can be. That first half, the intensity that we played with, especially in attack, Bournemouth really couldn't handle us. But you saw in that second half then, once that intensity started to waver a little bit, United really lost all sort of control in that game. It wasn't until Mino was introduced in that second half that United were able to wrestle back a little bit of control of things. Because before the sub, United was sitting deeper and deeper into that back five shape. And I'm very worried with United now with these sort of links to players like Baleba. Are we fully just doubling down on that really physical approach? Are we going to keep skipping any sort of short build-up? Keep going with that direct style? Because I think that physical side, that sort of physical nature of play with United right now, it can only get you so far. And in the Premier League especially, you've got so many teams that can match you physically. So you can't ignore the technical side of things. And that's what I worry United are doing with these sort of links to these type of players, like a sort of Baleba over the likes of Wharton or Anderson. Lastly, I'm going to show some signs of play from Baleba's time at Lille. And this is the really good aspect of his game. When he picks up the ball here, you can see him, obviously got a marker very, very close to him, but he's able to use that physicality, the really strong, powerful running to hold that player off, and he eventually wins a foul in this situation. But it's this sort of instance now, what I've talked about in this video, where you've got his team now with Lille, they're up against Nice, they've got the ball in that deep sort of area, but Baleba, instead of doing something to really get on the ball and try and help his team progress, instead you've got Baleba still just making these small sort of movements back and forth in that pendulum motion. Is he really sort of doing enough? As you can see in this same instance that I've just showed you, Baleba's teammate, while Baleba is making that small movement to the side, Baleba's teammate is dropping a lot deeper. He's making that quick movement to try and get on the ball. And he does get on the ball. Granted, he could pass to Baleba here and you probably got that short pass out. Instead, he opts to go long. But you can see it's these type of movements that I would expect Baleba to be making more of. But it seems to be his teammates rather than him. Again, another instance here where Baleba just simply doesn't really seem to be getting away from his marker at all. A lot of the time spent just walking around on his heels, not really showing a great deal of desire to really get on that ball. And I think it really needs to be an area of his game now that he is working on. And I think he has so many good aspects to his game, the defending, the physicality, the really powerful running. His passing range, I think, is actually really good as well. So it's this area, I think, is Obviously just something that can really round off his game, make him that £100 million man that a lot of people thought he was last season. And there we are, guys. It could easily be an area that could be coached into his game. But if Brighton still want that £100 million fee, you're expecting a really all-rounded player. And are you getting that currently from Baleba? When you add in, obviously, the struggles he's had this season as well, spending a lot of money on him is going to be a huge risk right now. Especially when you add into the fact that United need that controlling midfielder. And I'm just not quite sure Baleba is that guy right now. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed, guys. Subscribe if you're new around here. I'll catch you in the next one.